Hi, my name is Tom Llewellyn. I am the author of this new book, The 5 Impossible Tasks of Eden Smith, and I'm going to read you the first 2 chapters. Chapter 1, The Ancestors. This is the genealogy of Eden Smith. Chaos Fendersmith, who died performing the task of the dishes, was the father of Berthold Locksmith. Berthold, who died from the task of steel birds, was the brother of Ather Coppersmith. Ather, who died from the task of rats, was the father of Hester Goldsmith and her brother Bateman. Hester, who failed at the task of dishes but survived, only to be banished, was the sister-in-law of Morden Silversmith. Morden, who did the dishes, lived to tell about it, but died from the task of Mrs. Gunsmith's girdle, was the mother of 5 children, Elemo Blacksmith, his sister Lemery, who caught the rats, and his stepbrothers Gaspard, the elder, and Vachette, and his stepsister Morel. Elemo, who was pecked to death by the steel birds, was the father of Baranu Tinsmith, and his brothers Gaspard, the younger, and Soraph, and his sisters Seagull and Eden, the elder, who stole the girdle. Baranu, who nearly captured the birds but still died in the attempt, was the husband of Gete and the father of Vulcan. Vulcan Smith was the father of Eric Soniath Smith, who everyone called Eric. Eric, who was squashed by a meteor along with his wife Emily Jones, was the father of Eden Smith, whom later generations would call Eden the Younger, Eden the One-Eyed, and Eden, knower of the unknown. Eden Smith attempted all 5 of the tasks that had killed so many of her ancestors. She is the hero of this story. Like all great heroes, her family is a train wreck. Chapter 2, in which Eden's parents are squashed and she enters the guild hall. The generations from Chaos Fendersmith to Eden were messy from beginning to end. So it's no surprise that Vulcan Smith and Eric Smith, father and son, added to the mess in the form of a nasty fight. They spoke cruel words to each other, the M word and the F word, manufacturer and factory. They swung hammers and blowtorches, anvils and tongs. Eric stomped out of the guild hall of smiths and never came back. He started his own foundry and married a woman named Emily Jones, a Jones, which made Vulcan even angrier. But Eric and Emily were in love. They soon had a daughter and named her Eden. Exactly 7 years later, Eden was waiting at home on her birthday, supervised by a certain Miss Hathaway, the vice president of the Titan Foundry and an early party guest, while her parents drove to the bakery to pick up her favorite kind of cake. Eden's favorite kind was chocolate cake with chocolate frosting. On the way back, Eden's father had a sudden impulse to buy Eden one more present, a live orchid that Eden had spotted at the gift shop in the conservatory at Wright Park in Tacoma, Washington, USA. Eden's parents were admiring the philodendrons as they exited the shop when a meteorite fell out of the sky and squashed them dead. It also shattered all the windows in the conservatory, ruined most of the cake, and crushed a very nice lemon tree. Life is hard, but unfair. When Eden heard a knock on the door, she rushed past Miss Hathaway to open it. She wanted to see her cake. She wanted to see her presents. She wanted to see her parents. Instead, a woman with pale white skin and a black mole above her lip stood in the doorway. "Your parents are dead," said the woman. "They've been squashed. I am from the state. The law dictates that you must go live with your nearest relative if we can find one. Pack your bags." After a full 10 seconds, Eden gasped in enough breath to manage a question. "Where are we going?" "I said, pack your bags." From the corner of her mouth, the woman with the black mole wiped off something that Eden thought looked suspiciously like chocolate frosting. Miss Hathaway, who'd followed Eden to the door, proclaimed that Eden would only leave over her dead body, then pulled out her cell phone and began speaking to someone about company shares and something called controlling interest. While Miss Hathaway talked, the woman with the black mole tapped her foot as Eden packed. Eden felt panicked. She wanted help. She wanted more time. She wanted to push both these women outside and lock the door. She wanted her mom and dad. Instead, she managed to throw a few random clothes and a framed family photo into one tiny suitcase before she was dragged out of the only home she had ever known and into a car. Before Eden had her seatbelt buckled, the car raced away and squealed around corners, finally screeching to a halt in a strange neighborhood. Eden was hurried into a little house, bustling with wide-eyed children of all ages. "A temporary situation until a relative is located," said the woman with the black mole, already turning toward the door. "Do you know any relatives? Your mother's parents, perhaps?" Mom didn't have any relatives. "How about your father? Any aunts or uncles?" "I think he was an only child." "What about his parents? A grandfather or a grandmother, perhaps?" Eden shrugged, feeling numb. Dad never talked about his family. "This is problematic." The woman handed Eden a small dented cardboard box. "Here, I believe this is for you." Eden was assigned a cot in a row of cots. She sat on her cot. It squeaked. She hugged the cardboard box to her chest. At first, she couldn't bring herself to open it. When she finally did, she found the orchid plant in a little pot. Its main stem was broken off, just a few inches above the surface of the soil. There was no funeral. Once a day, the woman with the black mole charged into the tiny house and told Eden no relative had been found, then marched out again. "What happens," said Eden, "if they don't find any?" "They never found any of mine," said the wide-eyed girl, lying on the cot next to her. "And how long have you been here?" asked Eden. "Which time?" asked the girl. "This time or the other times?" "I do not like the sound of that," said Eden. One morning, Eden awoke and realized it had been 2 weeks since her parents had died. She had already been forced to change schools and leave her friends behind. She'd met with a tired school counselor and received both pitying and suspicious looks from the parents of her new classmates. She hadn't cried a single tear. She was afraid that if she started, she wouldn't be able to stop. "Pack your bags again," said the woman with the black mole as she burst into the orphanage that morning. She piled Eden into her car and drove her to her foster home. A purple-haired woman named Sienna ran the home. Eden wondered if Sienna would be her new mother, but 2 weeks later she was moved to another foster home in a different school district. This home had 3 other children in it. Eden was just starting to remember their names when she was moved again back to the squeaky cot at the orphanage for a week, and then on to another foster home at another new school. At her 4th home in 6 months, Miss Hathaway visited Eden on a Thursday afternoon. "You'll be relieved to know that Titan Foundry is operating just fine," said Miss Hathaway with a thin smile. "It's as if your father had never left." "How long do I have to stay here?" said Eden. "What happens to the foundry now? Could I live there?" Miss Hathaway, whose hair reminded Eden of a soldier's helmet and who always dressed in white, pursed her lips as if she had just bitten into an unripe banana. "Your father had no will." I was surprised too, but he was a young man. He probably believed he had years to live before he needed to worry about such things. He probably assumed that if he died, his wife would still be around. But, as you know, she is not. Miss Hathaway patted Eden's hand. "Therefore, company bylaws state that his share of the foundry be distributed to the rest of the stockholders, all neat and tidy. So there's not a thing for you to worry about. Just stay focused on doing well in school and making lots of friends. Oh, and I do need your signature right here. Miss Hathaway pointed toward a line on the bottom of a piece of paper filled with words. What is it? Just legal mumbo-jumbo. Read it if you like. I'm 7.5, said Eden. I'm pretty sure this is above my reading level. Sign, please. Eden shrugged and scrawled her name. Miss Hathaway tucked the paper into her purse and walked toward the door, then turned back toward Eden. I believe this concludes our business. Miss Hathaway and her white shoes scuttled away and never came back. School and friends, thought Eden. How can I focus on school and friends when I change schools and neighborhoods every 6 weeks? Some of the foster homes were nice. One had a hot tub that didn't get very hot. Using a butter knife for a screwdriver, Eden removed the front panel of the hot tub, reconnected a loose wire on the heating element, and put it all back together. It worked perfectly then. The old woman who ran that home smiled at Eden. Thank you, Edie. It's Eden. Well, whatever your name is, you've certainly got a knack for tinkering. Does that mean I get to stay here now? Asked Eden. The old woman smiled, but didn't answer. 7 days later, the woman with the black mole showed up again. Pack your bags, said the woman. Eden frowned. I only have one bag, you know. So you should say bag. Pack your bag. The woman frowned. Don't be smart. Some homes were horrible. One particularly smelly home had nothing to eat but dry toast. The woman who ran it allowed chickens inside the house, but never offered Eden an egg. After many months, it stopped mattering to Eden if a new home was good or bad. She knew she'd move soon, so she never got too attached to the nice homes or too upset about the bad ones. She never cried. And she learned that she needed to look after herself because no one else seemed much interested in taking care of her. She liked things clean, so she learned how to wash her own clothes. She hated being hungry, so she learned how to prepare simple meals like peanut butter sandwiches and macaroni and cheese. If there were leftovers at dinner, she learned how to sneak the food into her napkin and tuck it into her pocket for later, so she wouldn't get so hungry. She wondered what it would be like to have a real, permanent family again. She wondered what it would be like to have a friend for more than a few weeks. Each time she moved to a new home, Eden would unpack her suitcase of clothes and set the photo of her parents next to her bed. She'd kiss the tip of her finger and press it on the glass that covered the photo. Next to the photo, she'd put the little pot with the broken orchid plant. The orchid never grew. One time when she was back at the orphanage in the little house, she ran into the wide-eyed girls she'd met there before. The girl asked Eden why she carried around the pot. It's an orchid, said Eden. Orchids are the most beautiful flowers in the world. My parents got it for me just before they died. It's not beautiful, said the girl. It's just dirt. Eden grimaced. Do you ever say anything even the least bit cheerful? But she had to conclude the truth as she stared at the pot of dirt. There was no life in it. Why did she keep it? She stared at her battered suitcase. All it contained were clothes. If that woman with the black mole had told her that she would never be going home again, she would have packed more than just clothes. She would have taken more things to help remember her parents, like one of her father's favorite tools or one of her mother's favorite books. Now all she had to remember of her parents was an old photo and a pot of dirt. She longed for more. Eden sat on her cot. It squeaked. It always squeaked. But this time the squeak made her so angry that she tore the blankets and mattress off the cot. She looked at the springs underneath, pushing on each one until she found the spring that was making the noise. She noticed that its mounting screws were loose. She looked for a screwdriver but couldn't find one, so she found a butter knife in the kitchen and used it to tighten the screws. She borrowed a bottle of vegetable oil and rubbed a little bit of oil on the spring. She pushed the spring again. It was quiet. Eden put the cot back together and stood on it with her arms crossed, still feeling angry, but a bit more satisfied. The wide-eyed girl stared at her without speaking. As the years went by, dozens more foster homes and new schools went by along with them. Eden watched her classmates join soccer teams and text each other on cell phones and go to sleepovers. She wondered what it would be like to own a cell phone or to sleep at a friend's house. One time she found a broken phone on the sidewalk. Using a borrowed butter knife again, she pried off the back and tinkered with the tiny circuits until the phone glowed back to life. It only made her realize she had no one to call. She brought the phone to school the next day to show her classmates, but by then the battery had died and Eden had no way to charge it. 6 months after her 13th birthday on September 21st, the first day of autumn, Eden was temporarily moved back to the orphanage. At 11 o'clock the same day, the woman with the black mole rushed in. "I have news," said the woman. "I finally have news." "Good news or bad news?" said Eden, her mouth set in a straight line. "Maybe, just maybe, I can finally close this never-ending case. I found your grandfather, your father's father." Eden's mouth fell open. A grandfather meant family. Family could mean a home. A home could mean belonging somewhere. She felt her heartbeat accelerate. "A grandfather?" said Eden. I thought all my grandparents were dead. How come I've never even met him?" "He wasn't easy to locate," said the woman with the black mole. "He wasn't in any of the usual government records. His address was unlisted. He is, I admit, a bit of a mystery, but I found him. I looked and I looked, and I finally found him. An actual, honest-to-goodness relative of yours." "Can I see him?" Eden said the words, and her stomach churned. Her longing for family, she'd pushed it so far down. But here was a chance. "Yes, today. His name is Vulcan Smith. Pack your bags, your bag." Hopefully for the last time. The woman with the black mole loaded Eden into her car and raced across the city of Tacoma to a stone building. On the front lawn was a sign that read, "Guildhall of Smiths, Local 292. The woman handed Eden a letter-sized envelope. "Now what?" said Eden. "Now you go inside," said the woman, "and live with your grandfather." She nodded at the envelope. "There's a bit of paperwork in there. As soon as your grandpa enrolls you in school, fill out the form and mail it back to me. My card is in there as well. If you need anything, please hesitate to call." Eden wondered what her grandfather would be like. Would he tell her stories? Would he let her have sleepovers? This building was huge and fancy. Did that mean he was rich? Did he at least have enough money so she could stay with him forever? How old was he? Did he look like her? Did he look like her father? "Hurry up," said the woman. "I'm late for my other appointments." Eden took a deep breath and slid out of the car with her suitcase and her broken orchid. The vehicle squealed away. The Guildhall of Smiths sat on North I Street at the corner of North 10th and North I. It was a circular building of stone and steel that stood 4 stories tall above ground. It had a green copper roof and a wide porch ringed by green copper columns. Around the building, the manicured lawn was dotted with bronze statues of men and women wielding hammers, swords, and other objects that Eden didn't recognize. Eden held her suitcase tightly against her chest and crossed the porch. Above a black iron door in silver scrollwork ran the words, "Safety first." Eden knocked. The huge door opened a crack. A man's face peeked out, a wide, rough, reddish face, marked with old scars and wrinkles. He had thin black hair slicked straight back. "Yeah?" "My name is Eden. I'm supposed to be moving in here today." "I don't think so." The door closed. She knocked again. "I'm Eden Smith." "So you're a Smith," said the man. "Congratulations." "I'm supposed to be..." "You already told me you're supposed to be moving in here today. But that ain't gonna happen because this is a place for, old people, an old folks' home. No kids, except during visiting hours between 2 and 4. Come back then." "No kids? That can't be right. Can't I just wait inside?" Eden tried to peek over the man's shoulders. "Sorry, it's against the rules to let visitors in before visiting hours." He closed the door. Eden knocked again. The man yanked the door open. "Listen, can you at least tell me what time it is now?" said Eden. The man pulled out a silver pocket watch. "Couple of minutes before noon. Come back in 2 hours." He closed the door. Eden sat on a wrought iron bench next to the door. The man at the door had said the building was an old folks' home, but that made no sense. Today she was going to meet her grandfather for the first time. He was going to fix everything, and she was going to stay with him. She set down her orchid, opened her suitcase, and took out the photo of her mother and father. She spoke to the photograph. "I'm mad at you two. Why didn't you ever introduce me to this grandfather before? Is something wrong with him? Is there some horrible reason you never brought me to visit?" Their faces smiled out at her in silence. Eden almost started crying, but bit her lip and willed the tears away, because for the first time in years, she had a glimmer of hope. She just might finally have a home again if she could ever get inside it. When she felt enough time had passed, Eden knocked on the front door again. "Now what time is it?" 1:05, said the man. "You still got almost an hour. Who are you here to see anyway?" "My grandpa. I'm moving in with him." Eden ached for her words to be true. "Moving in? What's his name?" Eden pulled out the envelope the woman with the black mole had given her and began to open it. "You don't know your grandfather's name?" said the man. "I've never met him." "Well, what's your dad's name?" "Eric Smith. He owned the Titan Foundry." The man stared, unblinking. "Say that again." "What part?" "Who your dad is." Eric Thonius Smith." The man stared again. "And remind me of your name?" "Edie?" "Eden, like the Garden of Eden." The man stepped outside and eased the front door closed behind him. He wore a brown suit, a yellow tie, and too much cologne. He said, "If your old man is Eric Thonius, then your grandfather is Vulcan." Eden nodded. "That's the name, Vulcan Smith." "How'd you happen to show up today, of all days?" "A lady from the state dropped me off. She told me I was living here." "With Vulcan? Where are your mom and dad?" "Dead." "Dead? Eric is dead?" The big man pulled a huge yellow handkerchief from his pocket and mopped his face. "You don't look so good," said Eden. "I don't feel so good either. Give me a second. I'm Eugene, by the way. Eugene Mender." He checked his pocket watch again. "We'll have to hurry. Come on." He pulled Eden inside the entryway of the Guildhall of Smiths. Thank you. And there's more to come from Eden. This is just the beginning, and her adventures are about to start that very day.